A rapidly developing world marketplace for cars has helping driving CO2 emissions to an all-time top in 2018, say researchers. The major element in the close 3% growth has been charcoal use in China, managed by the government efforts to increase a weakening economics. But emissions of cars, lorry, and planes with fossil embers go on to growth in all components of the planet. Renewable energy include as well grown up the year, but are not compliance step in the CO2 growth. How's lot greater rather than 2017's 1.6%. The will worry about scientists as they had seen CO2 emissions comparatively plain for the 3-year up. Time charcoal use remnant under the historic top standard of 2013, it has grown up once again the year. China, the planet's greatest radiator, saw emissions growth an alleged 4.7%. To the history 2-year, the China by the government has forced the economics, and the economics is relying on building and hard production, charcoal and steel. While you increase the economics you in fact see a growth in emissions, she told. Some factors involve a growth in the US following several years of decrease, that the researchers say is due to a really common cold winter and a hot summer drive up consumer demand for power. 2018's top 10 has China on upper, accompanied by the US and the EU as an entire area. Following these three go India, Russia, Japan, Germany, Iran, Saudi Arabia, southward Korea, and Canada. A rapidly developing economics has seen India's emissions increase by 6.3%. Renewable energy are increasing quick but of a low basis. The 5 countries helping largest to increase in world emissions external of China, the US, the EU and India above the recent 10 years are Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, Iraq and southward Korea. Environment changing, wherever we are in 7 charts. One overall element through wealthy and impoverished countries like has been the extended growth in the intake of oil in the transportation segment. In the EU, the sum of gas utilized for air transportation and way transportation has surged by 4%. In US, use of charcoal in fact bring down time fossil embers utilized in car journeys rose by 1.4%. Separately of the charcoal history, the emissions of oil use in cars and freight transport and trucks and aircraft include not been abated at all, told Professor L.E. Cura. They fair hold growing and house related in and growth in cars anywhere about the planet. On to the expert, human beings are drive greater gasoline and diesel engine cars, traveling future rather than up, in more than countries. It's not nice news story, says the scientists, who claim how world emissions include to begin to drop by 2020 if the planet is to encounter the heat goals of the Paris Treaty. Human beings are just not compliance the promises they done 3 years ago while the Paris Environment Treaty was signed. World commitments done in Paris in 2015 to bring emissions are not yet creature match by proportional actions, told Dr. Glenn Peters, a study CEO at the Cicero Center for World Environment Study in Oslo, Norway, who led the emissions analyze. This growth in emissions in 2017 could be seen as a off, but the increase bet in 2018 is though high, and it is proper chip precise. The planet is so far lack in its responsibility to manage on a year consecutive in the goals set out in the Paris Treaty in 2015. It is creature seen there as else precautionary shooting of the actual planet how negotiators very requirement to do advance. All the hot speech speak at the UN Environment Summit Conference in Poland when T assist hinder environment changing, told Mohammed Ado, who's at the meeting for believer assistance. This environment does not answer to elevated rhetorical, it responds to carbon sequestration dioxide radiation reductions. If the is the largest essential question of our period, as leaders often tell, later why aren't they operating respectively, and show up for the environment negotiations? In spite the grim image on cars in 2018, the next is not so continuous for the domestic burning motor. Time they were uncommon 10 years back, down there are now 3 millionth pillion cars in use globally. Norway will halt marketing cars how are not electrical in 2025. The UK, France, the Netherlands and India say they will halt up 2040. car manufacturers are responsible to the plug in the way. Volkswagen says it will start its recent general of gasoline and diesel engine cars by 2026. The go has been welcomed, but lot believe it is not quick quite. We just cannot expect almost a block of a age to stage out the cars heating our environment and manufacturing our air toxicity, told Rosie Rogers of Greenpeace. Human beings residing in contaminated cities and cladding environment changing related disasters merit superior rather than how. The common increase in verdant power has not been quite to hold step in the growth in emissions, but how hairless title masks several considerable advance, say expert. The expenses of renewable energy go on to sinker. Morocco, Mexico, Chile, and Egypt are now making sunny power for 3 US cents or less than per kilowatt time. How's more profitable rather than natural gas? More than rather than 50% of new power generative power creature established order now is verdant. Breeze and sunny are duplicating each 4 persons year. Charcoal is departure ago in largest of the advanced planet. Time the US may not be stay in the Paris Treaty, largest US countrymen dwell in a jurisdictional how yet supports the Paris goals. About the planet, several 9,000 cities and municipalities presenting several 16% of the planet's people are devoted to Paris. Above the history 10 years, 19 countries consisting the UK, Ireland, France and the US include all cut emissions time increasing their economies. This identical is real of decarbonizing the economics. Automotive by the chase of pure airborne jobs and power independence amongst some benefits, the fearless, joint efforts of youthful human beings, civilian community, business community, investors, cities and state are charting the year to net null emissions by 2050. The summit conference comes 3 years following the 2015 Paris Consent on Environment Changing, at that all countries coordinated a schedule to range carbon sequestration emissions. Now is the time governments must begin decisive which to do certainly how schedule is put in impact.